Headquarters in New York. Good night.
Channel 2, Chicago.
From New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Jessica Savitch.
Good evening. The figures are shocking. The eyewitness accounts are even more so. At least 83 people are dead and more than 500 injured in yesterday's fire at the MGM Grand Hotel, the largest hotel in Las Vegas. The guests tell stories of helplessness, as many say there was no warning, either from the hotel staff or from fire alarm equipment. And questions have been raised as to how, in a modern hotel, fire alert equipment failed to prevent such a massive tragedy. Bill Sternoff reports from Las Vegas.
The fire apparently began in the kitchen that served 6 restaurants in the hotel. Fire officials still aren't certain, but they say there are a number of reasons why the blaze became a disaster. The hotel didn't have smoke detectors. The fire alarm, a manual system, failed, and the sprinkler system was inadequate. Fire department ladders couldn't reach above the 9th floor, and when the electricity was cut off, automatic doors stopped working. Hundreds of people in the casino, which is as big as a football field, were trapped. Fire Captain Ralph Dinsman says a wall of smoke came rolling into the casino.
There's no place for the smoke to vent. It just naturally went up. It was sucked up the elevators, went up the stairwells, and once it got to the 26th floor, it had no place to go, so it started back down. And this is where we found most of the bodies from it.
Many people died in the casino where the flames and the heat were so intense they melted slot machines. Casino sources say as much as $200,000 in cash may have been burned up. Reportedly, most of the cash was saved by employees whose responsibility in an emergency was to take it to a fireproof place. 2 people reportedly died, saving vast sums of casino money. Firemen said the smoke in the upper floors wasn't all that heavy, but it was deadly. Most of the dead were overcome by the smoke, which was full of chemicals produced by burning carpets and gaming tables made with plastics. Fire officials say the MGM Grand was built under a 1970 fire code. They say that's why the fire alarm and sprinkler systems were inadequate and why there were no smoke detectors. Fire Chief Roy Parrish says hotel owners were informed of a new code, and he says a handful of hotels, including the nearby Flamingo, were outfitted with modern fire systems. Spokesmen for the MGM Grand say they were never contacted.
We are making progress, so everybody just be patient and try to maintain your line. It's going to take a while.
Hotel guests, survivors of the fire, lined up outside the hotel early today and waited to go inside and search for their belongings. They were allowed in, and the process took hours. Another fire victim was located this morning, the 83rd. The body was airlifted from the roof of the hotel. Firemen believe there may be more bodies in the hotel, and they are searching the hotel one room at a time. Bill Sternoff, NBC News, Las Vegas.
And the stories are still being recorded, stories of fear and stories of heroism, the stories of the survivors of the fire at the MGM Grand. Frank Burkholzer has a report.
The Las Vegas Convention Center, which yesterday was jammed with thousands of escapees from the fire, today is where couples like William and Lorraine Murray of Needham, Massachusetts, who were sent to separate hospitals, found each other.
Couldn't talk. Just grabbed each other.
Where lists are organized to help families and friends find those who still are missing, helped by a computer company left over from a computer convention. Where family groups like Herman Cheremy, his wife and sister from La Rose, Louisiana, receive medical help while they wait for word of his sister's husband. At this stage, the search for missing persons must include the morgue, where the scores of bodies have been taken. Herman Cheremy told the story of Gus Guidry, his brother-in-law, to Clark County Coroner Otto Ravenholt.
He was at the casino last week.
And his wife went up, he was still down there, right?
His wife was upstairs, yes. And she left him downstairs at about, 6:30.
And you have not heard from him since?
No, and we've tracked all of it.
Yes, I'm sure you have. We will make use of this information, which might be of significance.
We appreciate anything.
Mr. and Mrs. Guidry had risen early for breakfast. She went up to the room about 6:30. He waited in the casino. The tragedies are dreadful. But there were the lucky ones, like the Murrays, who even planned to come back.
We'll be back. We're not scared of it. Of course, we won't be on the high 22nd floor. We'll be on the floor we can jump out a window.
Frank Burkholzer, NBC News, Las Vegas.
A speaker for the Nevada Assembly, Paul May, says that although this fire was indeed a tragedy, there was no way to prevent it. And some Nevada legislators were quoted as saying the state's fire code is strict enough and it is not likely to be revised. The MGM fire still will likely stir some renewed interest in fire safety. We have a report on this from Carol Simpson in Washington.
Shortly after the blaze broke out yesterday, the U.S. Fire Administration dispatched a team of investigators to Las Vegas to help find out why the fire broke out and how it could have been prevented. Fire Administrator Gordon Vickery said preliminary findings indicate that the MGM Hotel was constructed to meet minimal fire safety regulations. He said if sprinklers had been installed on every floor, the disaster might have been avoided.
I think you can state without a doubt that had that building been fully sprinklered, you'd have had a minor fire that would have been extinguished in its incipiency, and you would have not had any life loss. You wouldn't have had the fire that occurred.
Vickery also said there are 12,000 hotel fires in the United States every year. He said more lives might be saved if guests paid more attention to fire safety procedures, making note of fire exits, and remembering that in buildings over 7 stories tall, they cannot depend on fire ladders to rescue them. Government fire officials say the national attention focused on the Las Vegas tragedy may end up saving lives in the future because it provides an opportunity to remind everyone of the importance of fire safety regulations and precautions. Carol Simpson, NBC News, Washington.
In Kawazu, Japan, today 9 more bodies were found in the burned-out rubble of the Kawazu Prince Hotel. That brings the death toll from Thursday's fire to 43, and workers say more victims may still be buried in the debris. Officials there say it was Japan's worst hotel fire ever. And this note, entertainer Mae West, much loved and much quoted, died today. She was 88 years old. A look at her life in comedy and as a sex symbol of the 1930s. That coming up later in the broadcast.
You were wonderful tonight.
I'm always wonderful at night.
Yes, but tonight you were especially good.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
One-liners from Mae West. Today, they may seem only vaguely vulgar or comically camp. But you have to remember, back then, this lady was a shocker.
I am a good boy. I am a good man. I am a good girl. What is this, propaganda?
Ah, Lady Lou, you're a fine gal, a fine woman.
One of the finest women ever walked the streets.
A menace to morals, said ministers. Baffle box office, said Broadway and Hollywood producers.
Goodness, what beautiful diamonds. Goodness had nothing to do with it, dearie.
She grew up in Brooklyn, started in showbiz at age 7, dancing at the Elks Club, and discovered as she moved on to vaudeville and then to the movies that even in those tame times, nothing sold like sex.
I should come up sometime, huh?
Well,
Don't be afraid, I won't tell.
But,
Come up, I'll tell your fortune.
Looking back, she remarked that she never cussed, never took her clothes off. It wasn't what I said, she said, but how I said it.
Well, it's not the men in your life that counts, it's the life in your men.
She may have been Hollywood's first liberated woman, and she carried on that way right up to the end.
How do you spend your time these days?
Busy, busy, busy.
You must come up and see me sometime.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that, my little chickadee.
Mae West was, perhaps, 87. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Hollywood.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, great star of all time, Miss Mae West, ladies and gentlemen.
This was one of the last major appearances for Mae West in April of 1979. It was a premiere of the film Hurricane, held at the world-famous Chinese Theater in Hollywood.
Well, it's great to see you here at a Hollywood premiere. Of course, this may bring back a memory or two to you being here at the Chinese Theater.
Yes, wonderful.
Do you remember one or two of your films playing here, Mae?
Oh, yes, I'm no angel, and she done them all, and all of them. I've bossed since Miss Susan Johnson, she lost no jockey Lee. There's been much excitement and more to be. You can hear her moaning from early morn. I wonder where my easy finder's gone. Oh, I
When Mae West exploded on the movie screens in the early 1930s, she quickly and deliberately became synonymous with sinful sex. Tame, if you judge by today's X-rated standards, but back then, her double-meaning one-liners shocked movie audiences.
Goodness, what beautiful diamonds. Goodness had nothing to do with it, dearie. I should come up sometime, huh? You know, Miss Tara, I've been under the impression that you is a one-man woman. I am, one man at a time. Why did you admit knowing so many men in your life? Well, it's not the men in your life that counts, it's the life in your men.
You were wonderful tonight.
I'm always wonderful at night.
Yes, but tonight you were especially good.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
May I present my card?
Novelties and notions. What kind of notions you got?
My Little Chickadee, written by both Ms. West and W.C. Fields, was one of the last films she made for nearly 3 decades. The lady who someone once described as looking like she was delivered from a gay 90s time capsule had gone out of style. Then in the 1950s, there she was again, this time on a Las Vegas stage. It was the same classic act with all the double-meaning entendre, a variation of the character she always played, a character that began years and years before with Diamond Lil on a Broadway stage. Jim Brown, NBC News, Hollywood.
Mae West, dead at 88. That is our report tonight. Jane Pauley will be here tomorrow. I'm Jessica Savitch from New York. Thank you. And good night from all of us at NBC News.
Tomorrow's guest on Meet the Press, Carter aide Hamilton Jordan.
The feeling was joyous, exhilarating, alive. The word that captured it, hallelujah. It's the second performance of the 5th annual Do-It-Yourself Messiah. And this year, 5,000 amateur singers and musicians recreated Handel's Messiah at Orchestra Hall. That is double the number from previous years. A second performance was held because all Messiah tickets had been spoken for back in January. One of those tickets went to a woman from Kalispell, Montana. Jean Moore last sang the Messiah 22 years ago at Carl Schurz High School. This year, the transplanted Chicagoan got 2 tickets for her birthday. One for the flight to Chicago and one for the soprano section of Orchestra Hall. The best birthday gift of all.
And to see Chicago people so unencumbered and so enthusiastic and all join into doing something that they all love makes you realize that even in a big city, it's just still groups of people.
And those groups last night included everyone from the layman to the anchor man. Our own Walter Jacobson tried to hide, but we found him, along with Roger Field and Harry Porterfield, sharing the joy of the Messiah. Harry expressed it best this way when he wasn't playing.
It's the voices. It's the voices and being part of something that is truly magnificent. The Messiah as a piece of music is a masterpiece, and being able to perform it with other people who love it as much as I do is, again, an indescribable experience.
Night of song, spirit, wonderful memories, especially for one former Chicagoan. Well said. Did you ever lose your place?
I don't think I should answer that question, but the answer is, did I ever find it?
Don't answer. They may not let you come back next year. We'll be back in a moment.
Day 409, a new statement in Tehran. And despite so many disappointments, a sense of renewed hope here. For the latest on the hostage crisis, Peter Jennings. Peter?
Frank, as you know from overseas, it was yet another of those intriguing messages from Iran which suggest that negotiations for the hostages' release have moved into another, perhaps a crucial phase. The difference this time is that Ayatollah Khomeini apparently approves. In London, ABC's John Lawrence has been following today's events.
The fate of the hostages, some or all of whom are still locked up in the American Embassy compound, was discussed in a brief 10-minute meeting today between Khomeini and top Iranian government officials. The revolutionary ruler of Iran, who would have to give final permission to release the hostages, okayed the latest Iranian government position in the negotiations. That message is being prepared for delivery to Washington by the team of Algerian intermediaries now in Tehran. The official Iranian news agency quoted Prime Minister Mohammad Ali Rajai as saying after the meeting, "The hostage issue has become a dead subject, a hindrance and waste of time. Our difficulty is no longer political," he said. "We have only asked for financial guarantees from the United States." That's an apparent reference to the estimated $8 billion of Iranian assets being held in U.S. banks in retaliation for the hostage taking. Rajai went on, "It is then up to the United States to take these spies out any time, any day. Call it a feast or a birthday, whatever." That's a reference to suggestions by some Iranians that the hostages could be released by Christmas. Rajai said the new message contains Iran's final answers in the negotiations with Washington. God willing, he concluded, we hope there will soon be no hostage issue. John Lawrence, ABC News, London.
This is Barry Dunsmore in Washington. At first glance, the Iranian Prime Minister's remarks may seem positive, but the administration's public posture continues to be non-committal.
My mood these days is one of having no feelings of any kind of encouragement or discouragement or any other kind of human emotional feelings about the situation.
The key phrase in Prime Minister Rajai's statement was, "The United States has only to provide certain financial guarantees." But this raises the immediate questions, what sort of guarantees involving what sort of money? U.S. officials doubt Iran is willing to simply accept Washington's word, and in the past, Iran has claimed assets in this country tens of billions of dollars beyond U.S. estimates. And so until the U.S. hears, through the Algerian intermediaries, precisely what Iran wants, something which is not expected for at least a few more days, there is really no way of telling whether we're closer to a breakthrough or not. Barry Dunsmore, ABC News, the State Department.
For the nation, a double dose of economic bad news today from the OPEC countries, an oil price increase that may cost us a nickel a gallon. And from the major banks, another increase in the prime rate that will also send a shock wave through the economy. The prime today hit 21%, the highest in history. And economists say it may go still higher. The prime is what banks charge their biggest and best corporate customers, but its fluctuations affect a lot more than big business. Tonight, economics editor Dan Quartz begins a special assignment series on the credit crisis, its causes, and its impact.
Meet three Americans trapped in the interest rate squeeze.
I don't think it's fair to do what's being done to the American people.
There's going to be some of us who are going to be out of business.
I think the government policies have forced this on us, and it's just an incredible, chaotic situation.
These people are direct victims of the highest, most volatile interest rates in modern U.S. history. And indirectly, we're all victims. Money is the fuel that powers the nation's economic engine. Much of that money is borrowed. And with interest rates at record levels, the cost of that borrowing is so high that the engine is beginning to sputter and threatens to stall for lack of fuel. Businessmen like this Atlanta clothing manufacturer can't afford to expand or even make plans for the future because of the unpredictable way interest rates are gyrating. Hard-pressed farmers who must borrow thousands of dollars to pay for seed, fertilizer, and equipment see their profits wiped out when they repay the loans with the proceeds of their crops. Many consumers can't even get loans. In 42 states, usury laws forbid lenders to charge more than 21% interest on consumer loans. And nowadays, lenders can't make a profit at that rate, so they've stopped making loans for cars, appliances, and other big-ticket products. That's a major reason for the plunge in auto sales. The best gauge of what's happening is the prime rate, which is the interest banks charge their biggest corporate borrowers. Borrowing costs of smaller companies are tied directly to it, and those costs are usually passed along to their customers. So the prime rate affects the prices of almost everything we buy. What's more, when the prime rate goes up, so do other interest rates, and that's a blow to the pocketbook of everyone who uses credit. During 40 of the past 50 years, in good times or bad, the prime rate either remained steady or crept up slowly. In the 1970s, as inflation accelerated, the prime rate moved up faster too. But even in 1974, when rocketing oil prices made inflation even worse than it is today, the prime rate reached only 12%. This year, though, the prime rate has gone crazy, changing almost 40 times. And with inflation now running about 12.5%, the prime today hit a record 21% and is expected to go even higher.
What we are saying is that the inflationary psychology in this country is so strong that you need exceptionally high interest rates to break the back of the credit bulge, the inflation bulge, so to speak.
Ironically, while high interest rates are adding to business costs and thus making inflation worse, the main cause of this year's soaring rates is the Federal Reserve Board's attempts to fight inflation by tightening up on credit. The Fed is the nation's central bank, and its main job is to make sure that there is enough money available to keep the economy growing, but not so much that it generates inflation. Fed Chairman Paul Volcker, along with many other economists, believes that 2 decades of big federal budget deficits have poured too much money into the economy. So the Fed has been deliberately making it more expensive to borrow. Volcker argues that tight credit is the only weapon available right now to battle inflation. But the consequence is ruinously high interest rates. Tomorrow, we'll look at the disastrous impact of such rates on a number of Americans, including people like the home builder who had to stop construction of these houses. And we'll trace the way such effects rippled through the economy, threatening to touch off another calamitous recession. Dan Quartz, ABC News, New York.
Well, overseas today, there was further bad news for the economy. On the Indonesian island of Bali, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries has agreed to raise the price of crude oil by 10%. The increase is not a particular surprise, but it hurts anyway. At the OPEC meeting, here is ABC's Mike Lee.
Saudi Arabia led the way by authorizing the announcement that its moderate $30 per barrel base price is being reset.
At the level of $32 per barrel.
That means that Saudi crude, which sets the pace for the world market, increases by $2, with most other OPEC countries going up by $4, and the highest official premium to jump from $37 to $41 per barrel. There was also political tension here over the Iran-Iraq war. In a private interview, the Iranian delegate hinted that his country's post-hostage oil policy toward the U.S. will improve.
Well, as far as the two countries are concerned, we have been friends with all the nations.
The United States, sir.
We have been